Hello, we are back for another episode of the Smarter Privacy Podcast on the Digital Safety Group. And today we have a very interesting couple of conversations. This is going to be a multi-part podcast. And we're going to be talking about privacy law and work that attorneys are doing in the Metaverse.
And I'm Don Walkner. Hayden Pritchard. We want to make sure Hayden introduces himself.
Yes, exactly. So I don't want to necessarily talk all about what the Metaverse is, because there's plenty of places that are doing that already. Mm-hmm. But let's just talk about the Metaverse in a sort of high-level conversation, and then we'll pivot to privacy law.
Sure.
Okay. So the Metaverse is going to be this digital online existence. You're going to have an idea of, you'll have a physical world that you live on the planet Earth, and then you'll have a digital facsimile, a digital copy of a meeting room or a town or a location. And this location can be a copy of a real location, or it can be a completely pretend one.
And as you point out, we're going to go into a lot more detail about what that may mean in some subsequent podcasts. But even when you were describing just general 75,000-foot overview of what the Metaverse might be, kind of like a parallel to what we're doing, a whole bunch of what you're saying and a whole bunch of what I've read and looked at seems to be nothing more than trying to expand that which we are already doing using computers, electronic devices, game sets.
Yes.
And so in today's discussion a little bit, we're almost admitting that the Metaverse might be the future, but parts of the Metaverse are here with us right now today.
Yes, right now today. And it's obviously, it's very early days, and we'll have to see. People are doing a lot of crystal ball gazing of what it's going to become. A lot of people think that it's going to be driven by the games industry, and I think the games industry will work on the Metaverse. I'm not necessarily sure it'll be driven by. This is what I think it will be driven by. I think it'll be driven by science and by corporate organizations. And let me explain what I mean by that. Is that where companies want to hold conferences, they will work out that it's $10,000 American dollars to send a person for a week to a conference. Well, you've got, part of that 10,000 is airfare, part of that is hotel costs, and then you've got other expenses, and then you have registration fees for a conference. Well, you could send your employee a $400 headset, and you only have to buy that once. You only have to send it once, and then the organization will hold the same conference, and everyone will attend in the Metaverse. So it's sort of attending remotely, but you'll have an avatar that will represent you in the room, in the presence, in the building, and the building will obviously be built in the Metaverse.
And you have the meetings there.
And you have the meetings there.
I think that, and Hayden go back and forth, Hayden and I go back and forth with some of these ideas and have some fun. I think that all of the salespeople in the room have just fainted with the idea that they're supposed to close a sale or build a relationship with another person to cause them to do a transaction, but do it through some kind of avatar while sitting in front of a computer. In fact, that kind of segues a little bit in just noting that part of what we try to do at a digital safety group is to not only help attorneys and people figure out what it is they may need for legal services, et cetera, but to actually take a look at some of the functionality, in this case sales, as you got a transaction called a meeting, you got some sales, and we do have some experience on the sales side. The National Sales and Marketing Executives Association of Ohio has just awarded us an award, the 2022 Excellent Award, and we will be getting some kind of award in April, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a subsequent podcast. But we are sensitive to the fact, and Hayden and I go back and forth a little bit. Hayden is really, really strong on privacy and technology and loves the science. Yeah. And while it may seem perfectly rational, why would you fly anybody 10,000 miles? A lot of sales and marketing guys will say, you fly them there because they're the salesperson.
Yes.
And we really want to be in contact with another human, yes, not through an avatar. And that theme, avatars versus human, connectivity, separate, we're going to be bouncing that around over the next several podcasts as we take a look at the future of the metaverse and how it is here today and what it might look like. Yeah. So anyway, so you were going on about meetings, showing up, science,
science. And I think the other component of how the metaverse in the corporate side, it will be for testing. It will be for building immersive environments. So if you're testing a space lab, you're building a new space shuttle and it's going to exist in space. Well, you can build that and interact with it and use it before you have to build it in real life. The way that 3D printing has absolutely revolutionized the whole research and development component of where you can build prototypes within moments, change and rebuild again within moments. You can do exact same thing. So you could build a city and you could build cell towers within this imaginary city, and then look how the cell tower signal propagates in an imaginary city. Where are the spots, the dead zones within that city of your cell phone range, particularly as we start looking at 5G technology and obviously then the 6G technology. That's where it will become. You can test self-driving cars. That's going to be the next thing, and we're looking at, self-driving technology is in its infancy, but it's going to start really exploding. Well, do you test your self-driving car in real life, or do you build a city in the metaverse and build a car that has the self-driving technology in this metaverse car and drive it around in the metaverse? I think that is where the metaverse will exist. Obviously, a lot of people are saying gaming, but I really think that the gaming will be on the backside of other immersive environments, particularly within research and development on the corporate side.
Well, and certainly as that occurs, what we're seeing now is large companies, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. I apologize if I've forgotten any other big mega companies out there.
Microsoft.
Google. They're spending enormous amounts of money, and they've hired a significant, enormous amount, usually of large law firm talent, to, quote, enter this space. Facebook, now called Meta, they've jumped in. They've made a commitment for billions and billions of dollars to do this. And one of the things that I've noted is that most of the planning and most of the expectation of the legal services that are necessary today to create the metaverse seem to be aligned with sales of products to humans and protection of your intellectual property, protection of the stuff that you need to write to create things so that other people can't steal your ideas.
Absolutely. And I think that people are expecting, because they use Facebook and they use Google and they see commercials everywhere they go because of what they search for and how they interact with Facebook, how they interact with Google. So there'll be this expectation that there'll be commercials everywhere, and every action you do in the metaverse will then lead to a commercial, or an action that you do in the metaverse will be because of a commercial that you have seen, an advert. So I think we're going to have privacy laws. We really should start talking about the privacy component, because this is a privacy podcast. Yep. So we're going to have to start seeing privacy laws built for the metaverse and going beyond what we have right now.
Well, one of the authors that I was reading about in preparation for this podcast had indicated that if not built properly, the metaverse may feel like you are a person with a drone that's following you everywhere you go, recording everything that you do.
Yes.
And of course, that's not the experience that we want people to have. There is a concept that humans have got, especially in the United States, that I ought to have my cake and eat it too. I ought to be able to control the privacy nature of where I'm at. If I don't want certain things known, I don't want them disclosed. And yet I want all the convenience of using computers, et cetera, to share information right now. And perhaps one little microcosm of the metaverse on the social media side is like Facebook, where a lot of people get the experience where it feels like you're communicating directly with your family and friends, but you're really talking to Facebook.
Yes.
It's really the Facebook servers. They're the middleman. They're the broker.
Yes.
And they own that. And so as part of and so they own that, and so does your company own the quote little metaverse that you enter when you remotely access a company.
Absolutely.
To do your work remotely.
Yes.
And want to use your home computer to do that. So in that area, we might be able to begin talking a little bit about the concepts of what employers need or employees need just from the remote accessing side, and what kind of legal services might the employer and the employees be talking about or thinking they need just to do something as simple as remote accessing as a kind of a example of what the metaverse might look like.
Yes. I think the metaverse is going to touch on many facets of the law, and I think that we can dive into that. And also, I think we should talk about the services that Digital Safety Group will provide for those types of law. But we're going to be looking at intellectual property law. That's going to be absolutely huge. We're going to be looking at patent law. We're going to be looking at copyright law. We're going to be looking at employment law. We're going to be looking at contract law. And of course, the main one is the privacy law. I say main. That is that's my passion project. All those other
ones are just the law.
All those other ones are just the law. No, but as a law firm, Digital Safety Group is powered by a law firm, and is so. We have, and the purpose of this is a podcast to talk about the privacy, legal components. But we should talk about the other facets of the law that will become huge within the metaverse itself.
Well, and as part of that, let me add that there's two aspects that we bring to the table, and that we're sharing with you, because I think it's a way of viewing both the world we live in now, the world that's going to be, and some of the social changes that are going to occur because of the dramatic explosion of this type of technology. And the two aspects, though, are primarily this legal and technical, digital, real world, digital and real world. And so it is absolutely my belief that any attorney under the sun can and is trained to figure out what law is, if law is written someplace, if it's cases you can read, if it's statutes or rules and regulations, we can read them. It's when you take that knowledge and pick it up and try to apply it in a different environment that I find that some attorneys and some firms become really, really exceptional. And in this case, for example, you were talking about intellectual property law. Well, intellectual property law is itself almost is a kind of specialization along with patent law.
Yes.
You need some specialized knowledge to be an attorney in that area, but the real impact is how do you apply that type of law to the metaverse or even to a company that exists now. And what I find, and so for example, as an individual working for a company, if you invent something while you're working for the company, to whom does that invention belong? If you're working for a public agency,
yes.
We now have things like Space Act agreements with some of our space agencies so that people can enjoy the fruits of some of the work they are being paid to do. That's all the legal side. And that stays pretty much the same, I think, with the metaverse. But here's the challenge for attorneys and for those of you that are watching this. because the law generally has to be studied by attorneys in order to be applied to the environment, we generally lag behind. The law has to be written. We may become lobbyists. We may end up trying to craft ways in which legislation or people might build the metaverse. Maybe we can influence the way Facebook thinks it wants to build the metaverse. But generally speaking, for the larger corporations and the larger law firms, it's my experience that the law is usually behind technology. The technology usually is out the door, and then we kind of play catch up. And I think an example of that is we're playing catch up now even to some of the bad effects of some of social media, et cetera.
Indeed. I think that what we would like, let's talk about who we would like to be helping.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd certainly like to be helping attorneys and other law firms that are starting to get people coming to them, their client base, saying, I've heard of the metaverse. I want to start preparing for this. We also, people that are working for a company that are starting to think I may have to be working in the metaverse, and what privacy laws do I have? What power of privacy is available to me?
And that's occurring right now, although the clients may not come in saying the word metaverse.
Yes.
But client could easily say, hey, my company has given me the option to work from home.
Yes.
And I'm going to use my home computer, but at least like to know, I mean, what happens if there's information on my computer the company wants?
Yes.
In event of litigation, you and I have worked cases together on the forensic side all the time. And we frequently come across people that are absolutely surprised to find out that the device that they use to work for the company, that the company has rights to get that device and to obtain information out of it in purposes of litigation.
Yes.
And so sometimes it's helpful for attorneys to be able to know beforehand, here's how I can help a client, employer, and an employee craft a relationship so that the employee can, quote, work in the metaverse, which is work remotely,
yes,
and still have some of the privacy or all the privacy that employee may want. Don't want grandma's oatmeal cookie recipe being revealed.
Right.
But at the same time, and you've done this in even in your history,
yes,
you must be concerned from an IT point of view that if my computer hooks into your system, good grief, what's on my computer? I mean, especially because I do a lot of forensic analysis on my computer.
Oh, yes.
What have I got on it?
Yes, I mean, yes, because you use your personal computer for work and you connect it to the work system, obviously your photographs of your cat Fluffy are on your computer, but so is, a copy of your mortgage contract. So at that point, do they now have access or a right to view both all the photos of your cat Fluffy, but your mortgage contract as well? Because the two systems have connected. There is an intermingling of data, even if the data hasn't been swapped. But your computer, your personal home computer, some people will say, well, I'll have a separate computer. Computers are so cheap, they're so ubiquitous that I can separate the two and have a walled garden. And obviously, that's an excellent idea. But at the same time, is information that you share. If you have a camera into your house, because you're working from home, do they have the power to activate their camera whilst you're not at the desk, or do they have or worse, do they have the power to activate your camera to see if you are at your desk?
Well, in fact, I believe you and I may have worked this case years ago, but where school handed out a bunch of computers to make things equal, because that way people that could afford a nicer computer weren't advantaged over those that couldn't. So they handed out laptops, and then they put on the laptops anti-theft and device recovery software so that they could find out where the device is. And one of those pieces of software allowed IT to turn the camera on so they could see the environment in which the laptop was operating in the event it was stolen. And sure enough, Humans are what the humans are.
Yes, yes.
They ended up turning it on in inappropriate times or finding out about it at an inappropriate time. And so after the fact, suddenly living in an environment in which devices are used to communicate with one another, quote, like the metaverse, trying to perform certain functions, now we see a privacy issue jump up that could have been handled ahead of time and could have been handled with technology. I mean, isn't there some technologies that allow us? So, for example, we've identified that the company wants to protect its stuff, and we don't know what's on your home computer or even on your home phone. There's got to be ways in which we can isolate the company's stuff from everything else on that computer and protect it.
Yeah, there are some privacy laws that exist and are in place, and I think in part 2 we'll certainly talk about those.
Our specialization truly is identifying the technology that can be used to satisfy your legal objectives and your contract and many of your business objectives as well. So as an example, when we talked about just working from home and using your own device in that environment, most of the large companies already use things like mobile device management software, other pieces of software to protect the company from what might be on the computer or the cell phone. The same thing drops down to your level as an individual in the metaverse or individual working. If you're working for a company and you're working remotely, this is a two-way street. The company has a right to be protected against anything on your computer, but you've got a right to privacy and the things that are on your computer as well. And that two-way street needs to be managed many times, and it is best to have it managed beforehand rather than wait for something to go wrong. Absolutely. And the technological, some of the features of how that management's work, we're going to take off on the next one and make a deeper dive. But this is a big overview. In effect, the metaverse is here today. It's here today in different functions, such as working from home, et cetera, and it's only going to get better and or worse, depending on your perspective as we go forward.
Absolutely. Perfectly summarized. Thank you, Don. All right, so this is the end of part 1 of the Smarter Privacy Podcast, talking about the metaverse, and part 2 will be coming very soon. So thank you for tuning in and saying this is the Digital Safety Group signing off for part 1.